Hi everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the ITR RAW Rundown. I feel like I'm about to sit and review a really terrible horror movie, but it turns out it's just this week's episode of Raw. I'm Robert Duffin and I'm here with Kenny McIntosh.
Hello, it's time to talk about possibly the most panned episode of Raw in a while, which, well, in about 2 months, I guess. So, yeah, it seems like on the road to payback is pretty much just the road to Extreme Rules again, but just slightly varied. But I guess we'll get to that. But before we get to Monday Night Raw, we've got some news to go through, like we always like to do. And it's Mick Foley again, it's kind of the news. And I wanted to kind of get your take on this, Robert. He's spoken out, now obviously, remember he spoke out a couple of weeks ago about the fact that he's not signed the Legends contract because of the video game thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he's the only legend that's like publicly complained about it. Like, there are a lot of the other legends are upset about it, but he's the only one that's really complained about it. And now, I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence in how I think, but basically he's been on Facebook and stuff since Raw, with two things. The first thing is that he was tweeting about how on Raw there was one of his sort of signature elbow drops used, and that the announcers didn't reference him. So he was kind of saying that that's indicative of his relationship with WWE, and maybe the fans should help him mention it, which kind of just seems a bit like, I mean, do they have to mention every time that somebody does an elbow? I think let me get the exact. Okay, so he said on Twitter, "Wait a second, Michael Cole. Are you guys not aware that you just ignored Wade Barrett's Cactus Jack elbow for a second night?" And then tweeted, "Well, if the announce team won't acknowledge me, maybe you guys can. Let's see if we can get Cactus Jack trending again." And then following that, he then wrote a lengthy Facebook post where he essentially compared the Daniel Bryan Brie Bella storyline that happened on Raw. He pretty much called it awful, as most people have. And the last sentence he said was, "I've said on several occasions that I used up my ammo when it came to complaining about WWE storylines when I went to bat for the Yes Movement in the aftermath of the Royal Rumble. I'm going to do my very best to do just that. But I'll first ask everyone involved, Daniel, Brie, Hunter, Steph, Vince, etc., to take a good look at the nearly identical storyline that ran Zack Ryder's promising career off the rails and do everything they can to avoid that same horrible stretch of track." So, what do you think about the vocal Mick Foley as of late?
Well, I mean, if that's how he feels, then he shouldn't have to not say it. I mean, if he doesn't sign a contract because he wants to be honest and not just kiss everybody's ass, then I've got no problem with it. I mean, it is the referencing thing. I don't know. Like, maybe it's just there as like an Easter egg for people. He does the bang bang, like Barrett does the bang bang fingers before he does the spot. So if you know what that is, then you know what it is. I don't know whether. I mean, he's not the only person who doesn't get acknowledged as being the inventor of something because they're not popular with the company. So I don't think he should feel that they're just picking on him. But I can get why he would feel like they might be. As far as the Bryan thing goes, well, I have no issue with him saying that because he's right. I mean, it's awful. So, yeah, I mean, he can say what he likes. I don't mind listening, so.
It's interesting because he's pretty much the only legend that sort of, I guess, kind of semi-regularly over the last few months has decided to speak out. And he should speak out if that's how he feels. But it's going to be interesting to see, because, it's clear for anyone who has watched his return to WWE from 2011, late 2011, I think he returned. And he did the Santa Claus thing that, that company do not view him the same way they did 10 years ago. It's not even close. Like you can look at pretty much the trajectory of everything that he's done since he came back. And it just kind of feels like with each month, they just become further and further apart. And good for him for speaking his mind, but I just can't help but think that it's a shame that Mick Foley's kind of, I don't know, it just kind of like he's not really. I just wish that the guy that in 1999 was pretty much the third biggest guy in wrestling was more legendary than he is now, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I guess so. It's just how they want to treat him, really. But it's, I mean, if you need to, I mean, if you're, feel about Mick Foley how you want. You know, if you're stupid enough to buy what they sell you all the time with regards to people's status, then, well, I don't know what to do for that. I don't know what your issue is there, but...
Well, it's not about being stupid enough. It's about, WWE are pretty much, for people who maybe weren't around during the Foley boom that we were around for, all they have is the sort of image that's put out there. And it's a very different one from what he was at that point in time. If you started watching wrestling in 2005, for example, you never really got to see great Mick Foley stuff. And I just think it's an interesting thing. But there you go. If you've got an opinion on Facebook or Twitter about it, let us know. We'd like to hear what you think. And the other piece of news that has come out today was that Shawn Michaels was a guest on Jim Ross's podcast, The Ross Report, and he had some new information about the end of the streak. Which obviously everyone is sort of still talking about. People just want to know more about it. So what we learned from Shawn Michaels being in the podcast is that the decision to end the streak was made 4 hours before WrestleMania began. That's how late in the game that it was. Jim Ross talked about how he had bumped into Undertaker the night before at the Hall of Fame, gave him a hug. He said he still looked good. He still, like, when he hugged him, he still felt like solid, like muscle and stuff like that. So he still seemed okay. And he asked Undertaker, as a sort of jokey way, how many of these have you got left? And he said, I'll let you know in a few hours. And I guess the other thing that people were kind of, I think a lot of people kind of were maybe okay with the streak ending because they thought it was maybe Undertaker's decision. But it's come out from Shawn Michaels that it was Vince McMahon's decision to end the streak, but Shawn was confident that Vince would have good reasons to do it. But it's fascinating to think that that huge decision to end that thing was sort of done at such a late stage. But it got people talking, so I guess that's the main thing.
Yeah, 4 hours, 4 days, regardless of when decisions are made, if they're good decisions, they're good decisions, and I thought that was a good decision, so...
Well, the reason I'm bringing that up is because 4 hours before the show doesn't exactly mean it's a long-term plan, and long-term plans tend to work out better than decisions that are just sort of made right before a show.
Well, it's a long-term plan, but they don't have to book it week to week, because Lesnar...
A long-term plan they came up with 4 hours before the show?
No, I'm not saying that it's a long-term plan. I'm saying that if it is a long-term plan, they don't have to deal with it week to week like they do everything else. So they have time to deal with the tiny issues that it'll throw up here and there. So it's not like they had to go, well, we need to decide what we're doing tomorrow or next week. They've got time to decide how to deal with it. They just positioned people the way they want to position them.
Well, yeah, it's interesting nonetheless that that's how late in the stage it was made. The decision was made, and Vince McMahon was the one that made the decision. So he decided that he wanted the streak to end, and from what you hear, he pretty much wasn't of that mindset a couple of months ago, last year. So I assume that I would have to imagine that Vince would have a good reason for doing it. I don't imagine he would just... I'd be shocked if he just decided to end the streak for a shock factor on the network. I'd imagine that there's more to it than that. But we'll only ever hear if there is more to it if Undertaker decides to talk, or I was going to say if Vince decides to talk, but I can't see that happening. But that's kind of the main news nuggets that have happened since Monday. So Monday Night Raw, the night after Elimination Chamber, kicked off with the 20-man battle royal for the US title. It was announced a few hours before. We mentioned it on Monday's show. So Dean Ambrose defended the title. The 19 other guys in the match were Big Show, Mark Henry, Xavier Woods, R-Truth, Goldust, Cody Rhodes, Fandango, Titus O'Neil, Kofi Kingston, Zack Ryder, Santino, Sheamus, Ryback, Curtis Axel, Dolph Ziggler, Heath Slater, Sin Cara, Jack Swagger, and Damien Sandow. So Battle Royal to kick off the show, and it kind of followed the usual beginnings of a Battle Royal until it got down to like a sort of handful of guys. I did like the spot where they all kind of worked together to get the Big Show out and get Mark Henry out. And ultimately Sheamus lifted the US title. What did you think of this to kick off Raw?
It was fun. They opened with some action, which is nice, because there's been a lot of promos recently. People were upset about Sheamus winning, but I don't really have that problem. I guess people just seem to, because they don't like him, but it seemed to be possibly the beginning of a heel turn, which is, a positive for him. Ambrose held the title for a year, but never did anything with it. I mean, it's not really a title reign worth lamenting, so it might do something for the belt now that somebody else has it. They can free it up. And the problem is that they just were never keen to book him on pay-per-views or on Raw or SmackDown in many singles matches, so it doesn't hurt him going forward. If anything, it might be frees him up a little bit. Probably they don't have to be too concerned about the fact he's carrying it, and he wasn't doing anything with it anyway. So, I mean, don't know if Sheamus will do anything better with it, but it's forward movement, which is more than I can say for most of the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was fun. It was good. Obviously, people are now kind of thinking Sheamus is the US champion, Barrett's the IC champion. Are they going to maybe combine the titles? I hope they do. I think that combining those titles is the best move you can make, because neither of them mean anything, and it's more likely that one of them could mean something if there was one belt rather than having these two separate belts. I mean, how long was Ambrose the champion? Like a year or something? I think he was
won at Extreme Rules last year.
Okay, so yeah, so just about a year then. So yeah, and it was really, the reign didn't really do anything. I think he had a pay-per-view match with Kane at some point, I think.
Yeah, Payback last year.
So yeah, nothing really that exciting, but yeah. So and then Sheamus did a promo backstage where he sort of kind of said that he's been spinning his wheels since he came back, and it's all about timing. Tonight was the perfect opportunity. And the end of the interview, Renee Young asked him if he has any words for Dean Ambrose, and he just said with a kind of smirk on his face, "No hard feelings, fella." So I guess if it is a heel turn, maybe that's the beginnings of him sort of, not really feeling bad about, because, typically a babyface should feel bad, apparently, if there's a battle royal going on. God forbid they just take an opportunity. But, so yeah, I guess we'll kind of see where that goes. It's too early to say if it's going to be any good with Sheamus having the belt or not, but I guess we will see. And then, oh God, we get the first of a series of segments with the Daniel Bryan, Brie Bella. They're backstage. Stephanie comes in, congratulates Bryan, but then says all he did was anger Kane. And Stephanie then starts talking about she can only guarantee his safety if he stays in the dressing room until his match later tonight. And then Brie and Bryan turn around and notice that Kane's mask is hanging on the wall behind the door. Oh, it's just so crap.
This is just the worst, the absolute worst. I hated all of it, and there's more of it to come. The only thing that I liked that made me laugh, because I think it was a genuine attempt at being funny, was, it's not great that they were doing jump scares, that they were they tried to, like that they were lifted from really bad horror movies, but they were mostly related to Stephanie either knocking a door or knocking a window, and she kept referring to her heavy hand. And then she mentioned later when she did the bit of the car, she was like, "Oh, it's my heavy hand again." And that made me laugh, and I was doing lots of tweeting and hashtagging about heavy hands McMahon, which I like. That was funny, but the rest of it was shit, and I guess I'll save my final thoughts for that when we get to it later. What the kind of final segment of this story.
Indeed. So then we had Rob Van Dam against Cesaro, essentially the pay-per-view match, but minus Jack Swagger. Got CM Punk chance during the match. It was okay. It was all right. And it ended with RVD ended up getting knocked off the top by Cesaro. He was turned upside down. Cesaro sort of stomping him. Cesaro goes out to the floor, and then he won't break the referee's count, gets disqualified, keeps beating him up, and then Heyman tells him to stop so he won't get suspended. And that's kind of that. Cesaro doing his first fully fledged heel act, allegedly, since pairing up with Heyman.
Yeah, there's just the main problem here, and this is going to sound like a broken record because I'm going to say this a lot. There's just there is no story. I don't really know what the point is. They've not done anything. They put Cesaro with Heyman, but they don't do anything together. It feels better than Curtis Axel or Ryback from last year, but it's nowhere near as important as when Heyman and Lesnar are together. And so it just feels like this is going to lead to yet another match. I don't think Cesaro and Van Dam have had particularly great matches. There's like 2 or 3 different things going on here, but you know, Jack Swagger's obviously been moved along. The Real Americans thing is done. So I guess they'll do Cesaro RVD again. Probably a clean, definitive victory for Cesaro, you would hope, but I don't think it's getting him more over as a heel, really. I still. It's becoming more and more awkward, but I just thought they were going to do some kind of thing where he maybe teased turning on Heyman for a couple of months because people liked him, but he seems to be pretty much a heel now. But yeah, I just want them to do something. Like I don't know what, but just something. Cesaro and Heyman, that is.
Well, it's odd that for the first kind of, because they've been together, I think it's a month now, a month today actually,
Pretty much.
Wednesday that they've been together, and like it seemed for the first kind of, well, up until pretty much Monday, that like the whole thing, like you say, was kind of like Cesaro was pretty much still a babyface, but he was with Heyman, and now they've kind of made him do this heel act. So I don't know. I think that Cesaro is it's better that he's with Heyman, but I just wish that they would sort of make a decision on, like, I side with people like Jim Ross on this one, in that I pretty much want you to either be a babyface or a heel. Like, there's very few people that can do a Shades of Grey thing, and if Cesaro's a babyface, great, but if you're going to stick him with the biggest heel man, Paul Heyman essentially is like one of the biggest heels in the company because all he talks about is the streak ending. So it just seems like if you're going to stick him with the biggest heel, then make him a heel. But if you want him to be a babyface, then, I don't know, make a story out of it. And I'm just a bit kind of, I don't really know, when I watch it, like, if I was like 14 or 13 watching this, I don't know, I don't know if I would know what to think of it. Like, I don't know if I would know who I have to root for, or like, if I liked Cesaro, would I not like Heyman, or I don't know. It's just, I feel like it's a bit too convoluted at the moment, so I hope they clear it up somehow soon. And then we had a Wyatt family promo. So yeah, I'm not even going to go into it, but we had a Wyatt family promo, and any thoughts on this?
I thought it was fine. Wyatt's talent is that he knows how to talk. That's the thing. I don't think anybody's really hit the nail on the head to sort of what it is that he has. It's kind of, he knows how to speak. He has a cadence to how he talks to keep you interested in what's happening, even if it is kind of garbage. And some people sort of think that he just says the same thing over and over. I don't really think he does. This one kind of played into a lot of stuff he was saying before the pay-per-view and explained the nature of what he did in the match, which is fine. I enjoyed that, even if I didn't like the match. But again, there's no story here. Well, Wyatt is very good at masking that. Like, you almost believe there is one, but they've ditched the kid, which I was surprised about. I don't think that's going to be furthering on in any way, which I thought there would be. I thought he was going to do something more with that, but obviously they chose not to. Not there's anything wrong with that. But yeah, I guess the Cena thing carries over, and Wyatt's so good at this, but I don't know what there is now. I mean, I'm not even all that sure I enjoy the outsider thing. I didn't think that was the gimmick. I feel like there's been a significant change to the character since the win, because he says he did it for everybody that, couldn't get a date in school or didn't have friends. I became somebody when I beat John Cena. And I just didn't, and that kind of gives John Cena agency that I didn't think Wyatt considered him to have. His whole thing was he thought he was a liar and a sort of cheat, and he was a false idol. But now he says that defeating John Cena has made him something, and he didn't know if he was something before, which suggested there was no self-belief, which kind of counteracts the cult leader character, which makes me think that they're adjusting parts of the script to cover up for the fact that there's no story, and it's actually changing the Wyatt character a little bit, which I don't like, because I just don't think the Wyatt character should be changed to facilitate the fact that they can't do anything interesting with John Cena. And that's not a slight on Cena as a performer, it's just the booking of the character.
I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I don't want to see John Cena and Bray Wyatt anywhere near each other. I don't think it's any good. I think that Wyatt, the problem with it for me is that Wyatt is so good at investing you in the story and making you suspend your disbelief, and then John Cena just takes you right out of it. For me, I just don't buy it. I think he's, as much as, and I like John Cena, he's a talented wrestler, but he is a limited performer. He's limited. He said before himself, like, he has a character that he wants to play, and he's not willing to go outside of that, which is fine. Like, that's cool. But if you're then going to go up against a character who's really complex and sort of out there and stuff, like, it's just really hard to make that work. And like, now, I don't have any desire to see this continue. I think it's starting to hurt Bray Wyatt, because every week he's having to, like, do as much as he can in promo to sort of get people to still be intrigued by it, because it's just not good. Like, as a story, there's just too many flaws in it, and it's like, sometimes when I watch, like, if I watch a Bray Wyatt promo and then I watch a Cena rebuttal, I feel like it's a director that's given just two different scripts and they're not following the same page. Like, that's just how it feels. And I said as much as I really could say about it on Monday about the whole cage match thing, but there has to be a sort of a continual story with the characters, and I feel like with Cena, it's like 1 minute it's one thing, the next minute it's the next. 1 minute he's happy, 1 minute he's scared, 1 minute he's sad, and it changes so much, and there's never an explanation for the change, or if there is an explanation, it just goes back to the other way. And Bray Wyatt's an excellent promo. He really is. He's for his age, it's scary how good he is. But I just really want him to have a feud with somebody else.
The thing, it's not that they're. The problem is they are actually very well fitted, but they're just doing it wrong. Like, the Wyatt character is the perfect foil for them to do something different with John Cena, but that they don't want to. So instead, they know they work well together. I don't mean in terms of the actual match, because I wasn't good at all. But the character of Wyatt should be used to muddy up the character of Cena and make him more interesting for a while before he inevitably overcomes it. But instead, what's happened is they're dragging their heels on Cena doing anything. So they ended up changing the Wyatt character instead, and it doesn't make any sense. And watching Wyatt cut these promos is a little bit like watching the captain of a ship that's sinking stick his fingers and toes into the holes that are letting water into a boat. He's got about two fingers left, the other 8 are already trying to block this water, and Wyatt can't keep this thing afloat himself. So
I think for me, like with Cena, are they a good fit on paper? Yeah, but Cena doesn't want to do the things that he would have to do to make this work. Like, he doesn't want to go that far. He wants to, because if he did, it would happen. When you watch all the John Cena storylines, they all have potential. Like, him having a crappy year and sort of a story of redemption is a good story if that's what happens. But when your story of redemption doesn't really work because you didn't really have a crappy year, or they want him to embrace the hate, but that it just kind of dies off. Like, there's all these different things that they've started with him that all have potential in terms of a story, but either he does not want to take it to the lengths that it would need to go, and like you say, make the character a bit more murky and different for a little while. He's just not prepared to do that, or they're not prepared to do that with him. And it's interesting because at the end of this show, and we'll go into it more, Roman Reigns gets pinned. And a lot of people were like, oh God, Roman Reigns gets pinned because that never really happens. And it's like, but that's actually quite good to see someone show that level of vulnerability, that they can be beat, because then you're invested. Whereas if you're watching someone who is never beaten in any scenario, unless it's like, it's got to be an extreme circumstance for them to be beat, then it's just really hard to invest in that for me. So, but it's going to continue, by the looks of things, it's going to continue to probably be on Payback. It might even be Money in the Bank, which is a prospect to think about. So then we had Ryback against Cody Rhodes. The crowd really were not into this at all. Ryback had Axel with him, Cody had Goldust, and in the end, again, Goldust would try to help, but unfortunately Cody couldn't quite get the job done, and Ryback pinned him with a shell shock. So it seems like the Cody Goldust thing is going to happen, with Cody being the heel, Goldust being the babyface. I assume it's going to have to be quite a short program, but I don't know. Cody Rhodes had so much fire a while ago as a babyface, and I mean, he could still be a good heel again. I mean, that's not really a bad thing for him, but it just seems like, I don't know, I really wish this team had been able to stay together and do some more stuff, because the tag division isn't really got that many teams in it now.
No, I mean, Cody would be fine as a heel, but he was a heel for like 5 years and he never got as over as he did when he turned babyface. So, I mean, I don't think the WWE is actually, they're not exactly starving out for mid-card heels. They've got plenty of them, but I'd rather them do the story where that they kind of don't really turn on Cody so much as that they have a fight because they're feuding brothers, but everybody just kind of wants to see them get on, and then they have the match, and then Cody wins, and they hug and they apologize, and everybody kind of gets behind Cody before Goldust goes off at the sunset. That would be ideal for me, but they can't do stories anymore, so they'll probably not do that.
It's interesting as well. This is another discussion for another time, but because the way that it seems to be structured is that different agents get given different matches and segments, and they all work on the different things, and it kind of feels like that sometimes can hurt the product, because it seems like if you have a couple of people who are booking the whole thing, that the stories would kind of mix a little bit better, because sometimes you just feel like you're watching two completely different programs. And back to the horror movie that we were watching, the Danielsons are backstage, and they're worried about Big Bad Kane.
Even though Bryan comfortably disposed of him.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if the story is that he is only acting like a pussy because his wife's around, then they really need to make that more explicit.
They absolutely do. But it's funny because there's one point, I can't remember which bit it is, but Jerry Lawler says, who's gonna stop Kane? It's like, Daniel Bryan did on Sunday. That was the whole point. But anyway, it continues. Bryan is shielding Brie, the lights go out in the dressing room, so they run out of the dressing room. Kane's mask lights up. They get into the hallway. Stephanie turns up again, and she's like, "I told you to stay," which is, imagine Hulk Hogan or Steve Austin or Ric Flair sort of shielding their wife and running out of a dressing room to be told by somebody, "I told you to stay in that room." Ridiculous booking. Ridiculous. Anyway, so Stephanie is going to have their car brought round to the building so they can get Brie out of there. But unfortunately, she was not leaving yet. Then we get back to the ring, and again, I think a lot of people were on Twitter and Facebook on Sunday night really raving about the WeLC match. It's really hard to not say WeLC at TLC. WeLC at Extreme Rules, which was actually really good, and one of the rare times that they've managed to use the Matadors and 3MB in a good manner. And like most things that WWE do, they can't just leave it be. They have to just milk it until it's dry. So we come back and have a Cinco De Mayo celebration with Los Matadores and El Torito, which the funny thing is Los Matadores and El Torito, it seems like I guess they're meant to be like for the Mexican audience.
Surely even they hate them.
Well, yeah, but that's what I mean. Like they are so painfully stereotyped. Like, what sane Mexican would like these characters?
I mean, like the accents. Like, what is that? Like, do they honestly? That's like if they went, oh, we've got a really big audience jump in France. Like, let's get some guys out there going like, ha 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 ha. And I'm like, no, that's not really, no.
No, and then we saw a piñata on a pole, so you thought Vince Russo must be somewhere around. And Los Matadores wanted to celebrate Torito's win with a celebration. 3MB and Hornswoggle come out. It's just, and then like 3MB are like, we want to join your party. Drew McIntyre says it's not a request, it's a demand, and it's just. I actually felt like,
speaking of accents, Drew McIntyre apparently speaks some sentences in an American accent.
Yeah, he's probably realised that's the only way he's going to get promo time is if he pretends to be American, because they just don't do anything with him anymore. But this segment was actually painful to watch. Like, I actually felt physical pain having to watch this. It was terrible. It ended with Torito pulling a sombrero over Hornswoggle's face and spinning him around. Torito gores him and celebrates the Matadores, tossing candy out to the crowd. Not a shit was given by anybody.
It was just awful.
Like, see how they did that whole Saturday morning slam show? Like, if you have to do this stuff, do it on there, and maybe a 4-year-old will laugh for like a minute before they realise it's pathetic. But on a like prime time wrestling show on a Monday night, this just had no place at all. Then we get the new and, well, it's up to you whether you say improved or not, but he is no longer Alexander. He no longer lives in Bulgaria. He is now Rusev, living in Russia. Rusev has a match with Kofi Kingston. Lana says that she's still proud to be Russian and proud to come from a country that has the most dominant and powerful president in the world. We see Vladimir Putin on the screen, which can only mean that the celebrity match for WrestleMania 31 is Putin and Obama, which Vince would have to be the referee for that one, I guess. But yeah, so he squashes Kofi Kingston. Same as before. I mean, there was a bit more offense for Kofi, but it was like 2 minutes long. There's not really much to say about it.
It was what it was. They're just gonna, again, they're in some kind of weird. I mean, I keep talking about story. Like, most of Raw is a little bit like when you're reading a book and you sort of are nodding off a little bit, and you end up keep reading the same page like 5 times. Like every single feud is just reheating yesterday's leftovers, literally. In the case of Monday's episodes, so.
And then we go back to the horror movie. Bryan opens the car door for Brie. She gets in, and as so he gets in, the car won't start. Oh no! Sorry, no. Yeah, they get in and they're about to leave, and then Stephanie Stephanie attempts to tap on the window, but she just like smacks the thing so hard. Brie shits herself thinking it's Kane.
Old heavy
Um,
hands.
and yeah, old heavy hands McMahon. Stephanie says Bryan can't leave until after his match, and then she tells him that if he doesn't wrestle, he'll be breaching his contract and he'll get stripped of the title, which is ridiculous because for the last two segments she's been trying to help him apparently. Oh, so then Daniel Bryan comes out for a match with Del Rio, and the funny, well, it's not funny, but like the fans were noticeably not as loud for this as even the Daniel Bryan match at Extreme Rules. And half of that's got to do with the fact it's a TV match with Del Rio. It doesn't really mean anything, but like, you know, these segments, I think, were even killing it for the live crowd. Like, they were not that excited about it at all, and why would you be? But Bryan and Del Rio had a decent match.
Yeah, in an ideal world, this is exactly the kind of person Bryan should be feuding with.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a really good match. I think they got like 10, 11 minutes or something like that. It was really good. Del Rio is criminally underused because, you know, you can see from matches like this that he really does deserve to have more done with. And I think it's a bit shoddy that you have these writers who are from like Emmy award-winning shows and they can't come up with a storyline and for Alberto Del Rio. You know, I mean, it's not that difficult. So Bryan wins. So Bree's with him. Brie comes out to the ring with him. They celebrate, and then this is where it just... Now, up until this point, it's bad. But, like, it's not got to a point where it's, like, so bad that it's just unsalvageable. It's now getting to that stage. Because the WWE World Heavyweight Champion, the man that main evented WrestleMania, the man that beat Triple H, is in the ring, Kane's music hits, and they run away.
Now,
They run away.
I get it. Like, the only way to salvage this now is to do something next week where Kane comes after him and Bryan's just like, well, you know what, Brie isn't here this week. I don't have to worry about her, so now I'm going to kick your ass. Like, it needs to be something like that. The problem here is that, one, it is, ironically for Bad Horror, it is pretty much a remake, almost to the T, of what they did with Ryder and Eve, right down to the car spot with the... Well, you know, Zack had to try and change a tyre, which took him about 3 hours, and Bryan had to reconnect a cable. The only thing I was looking forward to was the idea that Kane might actually be in the front bonnet of the car, but he wasn't, so there was nothing really to be enjoyed there. They do a sort of Halloween spot. Kane is sort of lying on the ground, and then they drive away and they stop and turn around to look back because they don't know that the killer always gets back for one more scare. And Kane sits up and Bree's like, Daniel! And they have to, I mean, honestly, like I said on Twitter, the only thing that this got right regarding being a horror movie is that sometimes the lead female is so annoying you just want to stab her in the throat. And I really hated her in this, and I don't have any issue with Brie Bella. I think she's usually pretty good, but she and Bryan should not be a couple. Like, save the couple shit for Total Divas because this is killing him. The problem, the issue I had here is that it's not that I loved anything that Kane and Bryan were doing from WrestleMania to now, but ultimately when you really look down to it, because of the various times off that he's had since he won the titles, Kane and Bryan for Extreme Rules only had a 2-week build. They were only together on Raw twice. And that was absolutely fine. It wasn't great, but it was fine. And they had a match which was out with what I really think that Bryan should be doing as a champion, but it was still entertaining for what it was, and they got by. And I would have been happy if that was it, and they moved on, but I knew they weren't gonna. And I thought, well, maybe they can get another month out of it. But it's not that it just got bad. It absolutely jumped the shark completely. Like, it went from being an okay thing to do for 2 and a bit weeks until we lined someone better up for him, to the absolute drizzling shits. Like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. I hated it. I don't want to see 3 more weeks of this before they finally have that fucking buried alive match. And the most worrying thing about all of this, and I wholeheartedly believe this, is that when Eric Young won the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, everybody said that he was a Daniel Bryan ripoff. Well, you know what? I take my hats off to Dixie Carter, Vince Russo, or whoever the fuck is booking TNA, Because right now, they are booking the rip-off Daniel Bryan better than WWE are booking the real Daniel Bryan. And for people who think that's ridiculous, Eric Young is coming out on TV every week saying that he's a fighting champion, defending his belt every week in really good matches against credible opponents, and that is how he's being booked. And that's not exciting, it's not thrilling, it's not going to sell 1 million pay-per-views, but it's certainly better than this shit.
It is shit. It absolutely is. I think the interesting part of it is obviously we talked about how the original plan for Payback was going to be Bryan and Batista. That was the plan, and then Batista didn't want to do it. So, like, I know a lot of people are basically saying Bryan is now being booked as Rey Mysterio. I don't think it's that far, because if you were watching at that period of time, like from the minute that Rey Mysterio won that belt in WrestleMania 22, he was never even given a win in a match. You know, Bryan, the fact that they made Bryan and Kane the main event of that pay-per-view at Extreme Rules says to me that they do have some faith in him. So I don't necessarily think that it's a case that they're trying to deliberately bury him, but at the same time, you know, if they had the Batista thing in mind and then at the last minute that sort of was scarpered, so they had to come up with something else, like, you know, the plan is they're going to do, spoiler alert, the plan is to do a Buried Alive match at Payback.
The thing is, if they do go ahead with that stipulation, I imagine they main event Payback as well, because of the nature of that gimmick. It's very difficult to do one of those matches where the rest of the show carries on after that graveside's been used.
Yeah, for sure. So in that sense, like, I'm trying to kind of be like, okay, I get that maybe this stuff, you know, this whole episode, maybe this was all kind of put together last minute, but at the same time, it's still really, really bad. And like, it's funny because like I've listened to a few different podcasts since Monday because I really just was interested in people's perspective, and I was on Twitter on Tuesday trying to catch up with everything, and a lot of people really had an issue with Daniel Bryan getting out to change the car. That was a real issue for some people, and then other people were saying, you know, the car doesn't really matter, but it kind of does because it's part of the overall picture, and the overall picture is Daniel Bryan is the World Heavyweight Champion. And the WWE World Heavyweight Champion, in theory, is supposed to be someone that you would pay to see, and someone that's like more than just your average wrestler. And when you're putting Bryan in a scenario that is similar, scarily similar to the buffoon that is Zack Ryder, then I just don't get it. Like,
Bryan is a guy people want to pay to see, but they're not going to want to pay to see him if he has to do another month of this shit. I'm not angry at Batista because, to be honest, the more I read about the situation, I get where he's coming from. Is he being selfish and looking out for himself? He is, but it's wrestling, and that's kind of how they have to be, I guess. You know, you have to be thick-skinned and look out for yourself in that business. But I just feel like, you know, well, I think it's ridiculous he's worried about, you know, what he's doing on the fake wrestling show before he goes to promote a movie, you know, the fake space movie. But I hope he watched this and went, fuck, like, maybe I should just go for the match, because it's not going to do. I mean, the thing is, if he's thinking I'll wait to come back to wrestle him, I don't know what you're coming back to wrestle, a guy that's been completely emaciated, like, creatively by the absolute shittiest stuff you can possibly imagine. I hated this. This is the first thing. I think this is probably, barring any of the NXT crap, this is probably the worst I've ever seen Bryan booked. And this is the guy that lost his world title in 18 seconds at WrestleMania. That actually made him. This is going to kill him. Yeah,
it's hard. Like, it all depends on how they follow up on Monday. Like, we've got 3 Raws until Payback. You know, I think it was Stuart McPherson had said, obviously, that I'm the one that tries to be optimistic. I am trying. It's very difficult in this scenario to be optimistic. Like, I get that they wanted. I get that with Daniel Bryan, like, for better or for worse, you know, like, you can't book him as like, you know, he's not going to be a Rock or a Steve Austin or a Hulk Hogan or a John Cena, but he can still be something different. He can be something new, and it just seems like they just don't know what to do with them, and they're sort of giving him this stuff, and like it's just making him look like an absolute chump. And it's not making him look like a world champion. And to me, all the little details that have happened have really hurt him. Like when he came out to do the promo, when was it? I think it was the last week's Raw, the one before Extreme Rules, when he came out and Stephanie was in the ring, and he was with Brie. Like, why did he not have the belts? I know it's a tiny thing, and I know he had the personal circumstances to deal with, but he fought for 6 months to get those titles on TV. There's no excuse for him not having those belts out there with him.
It doesn't need a genius to work out what you need to do with him right now. Like, the thing is, if you are struggling with what to do with him, like storyline wise, then just let him wrestle matches. Like, that's the thing. These aren't even for the belts. At no point has Kane expressed any desire to actually be champion. He just wants to eviscerate Daniel Bryan, whatever that means in a PG-13 WWE world. I just,
But
it's
you,
not a story.
I actually am okay with the story. Like, WWE do this sort of stuff. Like, and they've done it with Cena before. They've done it with Austin before, where they do these things like with somebody in a car and people doing different things, and Kane using his sort of horror movie presence, I guess, when they decide to do this sort of stuff. I'm not really that bothered at that. My issue really is with the way that Bryan has been booked to react to everything, because he's been booked to react like a pussy in every scenario, and that's the problem. Like,
well, only this week. Like,
yeah, no, I just mean on this week, yeah, through the show, because like, you know, he goes out and has the match with Del Rio.
The
It's a really good
problem
match.
is his wife. I've said before that I genuinely think that Savage and Elizabeth are the exception that proves the rule. Maybe Molly, Holly, and Spike, but in general, on a main event level, wrestling relationships, husbands and wives, boyfriends and girlfriends, it just doesn't work. It does not work. You can do evil couples like Triple H and Stephanie. You can just about get away with that, but this stuff. I mean, when Austin was carting Deborah around, death, utter.
That's what I was going to say.
Utter creative death. This is dumb. I know it's on Total Divas. I know people know this is a thing and they invest in it. But you know what? They don't have John Cena carting around Nikki Bella, and I think this. It's not being sexist. I'm not. But I just think that having his missus around cuts his balls off, and it just writes him into a corner where he has to become the protective, like, goofy husband, and I think it hurts him. It's not what people got behind. They didn't get behind Daniel Bryan loving husband. What he got over because he was Daniel Bryan, really good wrestler. That was what it was.
This whole story this week reeks of a Hollywood writer trying to come up with something, because this is not a pro wrestling storyline. This is an entertainment storyline. And yeah, like, the thing is, if you are doubtful about the fact that couples don't work, like, the plan was for The Rock to be managed by Deborah at WrestleMania 17. Imagine that had happened. Do you really think the Steve Austin thing would have went exactly the same way at 17? Probably not. It would have killed the buzz of that match. You know, the fact that Austin would have to be protective of Deborah. Ridiculous. They killed it in 2 weeks, and do you know what? I hope they kill this in 2 weeks. I hope next week. Do you know what? Have Kane come out and tombstone Brie or something, and just get her fuck off for a few weeks, and just let Bryan settle it like a guy who just wants to, like, yeah, he just needs to be an ass kicker. And you know, I would disagree and say that he does need to do more than just wrestle matches. I don't think in WWE that's what the champion should be doing.
What I mean is, if they are struggling so much to give him something, then I would rather he just wrestled than this.
Fair.
Like, I don't think that should be how they're booking him. I'd rather they booked him in a compelling, competitive, athletic-based storyline, because I think that's where he works best. Like, that's why the Triple H thing worked, because it was about building to a match where you wanted to see Bryan kick Triple H's ass. And you could do that over and over again. You could do that with Batista. But I just think if they were actually sitting at a meeting and they went, okay, we don't really know what to do with him as an angle, so we're going to do this horror movie thing. I really wish someone just put their hand up and went, you know what? If we're really struggling to give him something before Payback, let's just put him in a feud with a guy who's held the world title before or held the WWE title before that's not doing anything, and just let them have a bit of a back and forth, and then he defends the belt against him, and he successfully defends it, and that's it. And then we get out the other end of it. Like, he wouldn't be a bigger star, but he wouldn't look like an idiot.
Yeah. I don't want to jinx this, and I feel like I'm about to. I mean, surely it can't get any worse next week. Surely, surely this has to be the bottom of the barrel moment that it all gets better from
Yeah,
here.
well, to be fair, Ryder and Kane never went beyond this. Like, the episode in which this happened to them, that was kind of it. Nothing got any more ridiculous than this, but I tell you what, if Kane starts throwing thunderbolts of lightning at Bryan and Brie next week, then I'm turning off.
Well, the interesting thing is Kane is due to do he's due to do some stuff for the movie that he filmed, the horror movie, funnily enough. So he is going to lose at Payback.
Yeah, well,
He is going to
the
get.
only pleasure I can take from this is the fact that Bryan won't lose the belts. But it's
Yeah, I'm
small.
I'm more kind of like I almost feel like it's like how can I describe it? It's like you're in a video game and you're like near the end of the round or the level that you're on, and it's like if you can just get to the end of this level, you can move to the next one.
Yeah,
And it's like I just want Brian to get to Payback and not be completely raped of all his dignity and push. And then the night after Payback, there's somebody fresh to fight, whoever that is at that point.
the thing is, I'm not that worried because I feel like that once all this stuff's over and Payback happens, like the next night, they're gonna act like none of this ever happened. Whatever the next story is, they're just gonna pretend that it's all said and done now. So, because that's how they do it.
Yeah,
But
it's gonna be it. But
it's not. I mean, unfortunately, you have to enjoy wrestling on a week-to-week basis, and well, I say enjoy, endure is probably the more appropriate word.
do you know? I think to try and be optimistic. I think part of the reason that this week was such a drag is because stuff has been so entertaining in certain ways in the last couple of months. Like there's been enough to each week that's made you excited or made you interested to keep watching and to keep going every week. WrestleMania was great. Extreme Rules was quite good. So that's why when you get a show like this, you kind of go, "Oh fuck's sake, this is just."
The
Such a step in the wrong direction.
the only thing I wanted to, and apologies for anybody that was doing Twitter on Monday because this is just rehashed junk, but the only thing I want to carry over from this is the heavy hands McMahon thing. I want to see segments where like Stephanie's like in the toilet washing her hands and then she goes to turn the tap off but she rips the tap out by accident. Or she tries to leave a room and rips the door handle off because she's just got those heavy hands. And then we turn to Triple H and we're like, how heavy are those hands? And he sort of looks down at his crotch and winces. So just general stuff like that. That would be great. I'd like more of that. But
There you go. I feel quite bad for Kane because I feel like at 47, like I've liked him going back to being Kane again, but I just feel like the material's just crap. There's ways to use Kane. There's ways to use this Kane with Brian and make it good. Bring up their fucking history. You know, yeah, I don't know what you do. Bring in Dr. Shelby. Anything's better than this.
yeah,
Anyway,
even do a thing where maybe Kane's conflicted. Like maybe he flits between wanting to hurt him and then maybe he hurts him a bit and he looks at him and he's like, oh shit, like I did, I was this guy's friend at one point. Like anything to be more invested in this. Like I don't want to see cameras definitely filming in the back seat of the car while they're having a conversation because it's not a movie. It's not a movie, so don't shoot it like one. It's like
as
when
desperately as they want to be taken, as desperately as they want to be thought of as movies, they're not.
it was
It's
like
just,
that, it's like that horrible Triple H Randy Orton home invasion thing where they had, they filmed it with like they had a multi-cam setup. They had multiple cameras set up all over the place to catch all the angles, and I'm like, well, he's clearly not just turned up at this guy's house to kick his ass. There's cameras set up everywhere.
it's very rare that you can get away with it. Like I remember the whole Stephanie getting in the car with Undertaker going, "Where to, Stephanie?" That worked because the product was so hot
Also,
and the characters were so good.
it's all about timing. Like I was talking about the reason, like a Buried Alive match has to go on last because you can't have people sitting aware. Like you can't have like 3 more matches happening after that, and people are walking past that grave, and I'm like, well, is Kane still buried in there? Like you need to like
Yeah.
that Undertaker Where to Stephanie worked because it was the last segment of the show. It was the last thing that happened on that Raw. So like it's over and then the show's finished and you've got no time to sit and think about it. But if you start doing, if you start doing terrible fourth wall, well, it's not a fourth wall thing. It's like trying to build more walls. It's like trying to make it even less realistic. I don't understand it.
So yes, I guess we'll see next week what we get. Jesus. So then we got an Intercontinental title rematch with Big E against Bad News Barrett, and Big E came out and like the crowd did not react to him in the slightest. Like it was dead. And, like if they had played Zack Ryder's music, he would have got a better reaction than Big E. That's how bad it was. Barrett came out a little bit of a pop. Barrett says got bad news again. There's going to be some changes. The deformed slobs in the crowd might have been worthy of a champion like Big E, but they're going to need a lot of cosmetic surgery to be worthy of a champion like him. Again, I love Barrett, but the material's still shockingly shit. But anyway, they have an okay match. Again, it's like when you watch a match like this and you know like 100% that there's no chance that, you know, at the end of the day, there's a UK tour in like a week. Barrett's not losing the IC title. Like he's going to the UK with the belt. That's going to happen. So the match didn't really hold much drama for me. Barrett won it. And anything else to say on that?
Nah, there is nothing else to say. It is what it is.
Interesting news about the network. WWE are now offering a deal where basically if you have the network, you can refer a friend, and if you refer a friend, both of you get a $25 gift card for WWEshop.com, and you know it is a good deal, and you can do it for up to 10 of your friends. But there's two things here that should be kind of alarm bells for the fact that the network is not going as well as you might think. Number one, this is the second deal that they've had in like 2 weeks. Like they had a deal 2 weeks ago that they stopped, and they've got another one, which means that their numbers are not where they want them to be. And then also, John Cena was not on this show, and they were saving him for main event on the network. So, you know, they really want people to try and get this network now. They've also, earlier on this week, they sacked the vice president of programming for the network. They've let him go. So, I don't know the ins and outs of it enough, but I think it's the right move to let this guy go, because I think the network has a lot of potential, but it's kind of being mismanaged in terms of what they're putting on there. Like, you know, if they're going to do original content, I think there's better original content they can do. People want more of the archive stuff. You know, like a lot of people, there's so many fans out there, like, you know, they've got like 700,000 people almost. Like, there are fans who don't watch WWE that were massive fans of the AWA or WCW or whatever, who I think would spend money on a network that would give them a decent amount of content of that company. But they're not given that, you know, and they need to do some sort of surveys and research and studies into exactly what people want, because like that's the only way the numbers are going to grow, because realistically the 700,000 people or whatever it is that have bought this network, is there really that many fans that want it that haven't got it yet?
No, the issue is that, as with everything in modern culture, people want everything and they want it now. And I get why they can't do that. They're not just going to throw everything on there. If they want it to run like a TV channel, which they kind of do a little bit, then maybe they need to start, you know, saying on Tuesday night is Nitro. We show episodes of Nitro or something.
Yeah.
I guess the problem is like, well, I'm not really the best example, but I mean, I signed up for the network on day one, and I sometimes forget I've got it. Like, I barely watch anything on it, and, you know, if I was able to cancel it, I probably would, because I'm just not that interested. I also love it's like Netflix, but better. It's like, well, no, it's not, because Netflix can cater to everybody. The network's just for wrestling. So even on an actual realistic level, it's not better.
Well, I mean, the comparison to Netflix is a better way to get people to know what it is, rather than saying
it shows me the arrogance of the company, because the correct slogan should be, it's like Netflix for wrestling.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
why did they have to get a dig in? Like, it's like Netflix, but you know what? It's got a big range of movies and TV shows. Who needs that? Like, nobody wants a wide variety of entertainment. Like, just get this one that's all. It's like Netflix for wrestling. Say that. But they're so bratty. Like, in terms, the reason that they don't get serious attention from other Hollywood or American media outlets is because the WWE is seen as like the 14-year-old snot-nosed, bratty, arrogant kids of the entertainment world, and they do things like that, and you're not surprised that that's how they're viewed.
Yeah, it's funny because they have a lot of impressive statistics that they just kind of change. That it's funny because, like I said, I was watching WrestleMania back for the first time at the weekend, and when the show opens, the first thing Michael Cole says is, "For the better part of 4 decades, WrestleMania has." It's like this is the 30th show. 3 decades is impressive. Just say 3 decades.
Mm.
You don't need to like you don't need to exaggerate it. Like 3 decades is impressive. Just use that. And also there's the thing with the network as well is they've got 667,000 or whatever it is. The stock price plummeted a little bit when those numbers came out because originally they had said that 60 million homes in America had one WWE fan, which is ridiculous. But um, now, like, I can't remember the exact company, but basically WWE are being investigated by some sort of trade commission for like giving out false information of some description. And I don't know it's not like a thing of like they say, but they've got more Twitter followers than they have. But it's like they've been to the level of like they've been giving out false information that's maybe got people to buy stock on that basis or whatever. So I guess when more comes out about that, we'll find out. But with the network, with the 667,000 people they've got, yeah, they might get up to 700,000 or 750 or their goal of 1 million by the end of the year. But they've got to account for the fact that in September or August, whenever it is, like there probably will be like 10%, maybe more, that will cancel the network. They might try it out for 6 months. They'll be like, it's not for me. So they need to account for that as well. So it'll be interesting, I guess, to see where it goes. Then we got a special Mother's Day message from Mr. T, which I'm sure he is delighted that they've taken what he thought was a serious speech and just made it a joke. Zeb Coulter comes to the ring with Jack Swagger. He has a deportation list, which is actually really funny. It's the one comedy in this show that actually worked. On the list was Cesaro, Paul Heyman, because he's with Cesaro, Emma, Santino, Sheamus, and Paige. And Zeb was great, as usual. And then it was time for the Adam Rose party. The party music kicked in. The Rosebuds came out. Adam Rose followed. They partied their way to the ring. Rose came in, said to Zeb, "Don't be a lemon, be a rosebud." Swagger went for him, got dumped over the top rope. And then Rose and his Rosebuds partied around Zeb until Zeb could escape. And that was the segment. So it didn't come across very well. The crowd did not come across that they cared in the slightest on TV. And live, it doesn't seem like it was a much better reaction. You are a big fan of Adam Rose. What did you think of the?
Well, I read the opposite. I saw a lot of stuff on Twitter saying that in the arena that people were reacting to it, and when his music faded out, people were singing the riff. So it didn't come across great. But I don't really know what to say, like, because I just really like him, and I don't know if he's a good wrestler. I don't know if it's going to work or if it's going to be a long-term thing. I mean, some people are like, "Oh well, it's just another Fandango," and then they just walk away. They're like, "Oh well, I don't care. I'm not going to even give it a chance." I think he's funny. He makes me laugh. I like the gimmick, and it was genuinely. It's crazy to say, but this was the only reason I kept watching Raw on Monday, because I knew this was going to happen. I knew he was going to turn up. And I like him. And it's one of those things, sometimes someone comes along in all forms of entertainment that you just inexplicably enjoy, no matter what, whether it's good or not. And I heard he was on Main Event, and it came across a little bit better. And I'm not shocked that it didn't come across well, because no one from NXT has come across well on their debut, apart from Paige, I guess. But like even the Wyatts debut, everyone chanted Husky Harris. Emma, nobody was dancing, nobody got it. I imagine the same thing will beset Bo Dallas when he finally turns up. I imagine he will also be scrutinised to beyond belief. But if if Adam Rose turns up every week, they do the entrance, he says some things in his funny voice, and then he prances about. I like it. Makes me laugh, and it was just about the only thing that I enjoyed from this show. So.
One of our live listeners, Rob, telling was actually in the arena live, and I'd heard about some people saying that it came across really well in the arena, and then others said it didn't. So I asked him what his experience was, and he said that as far as Adam Rose, there were pockets of the crowd who really were getting into the entrance, humming along to the theme tune, which is pretty cool to see live. But overall, he wouldn't say it was a huge reaction by any means. The funny thing was, I was in work today, and I pretty much found myself humming Adam Rose's theme tune through most of the day. So I like him. I think he's decent. But the thing with when the NXT people come in is like, you're not really going to know how it's going to go until the person actually gets into a stage where they have a rivalry with someone, and see what happens then. So I guess we just need to wait and see what happens with Adam
Rose. The thing that worries me is that it's almost a heel character.
Yeah, he did come across a little bit.
I feel like he could have taken it either way. Like, if I didn't already know he's meant to be a babyface, I would have been like, is he a bad guy? Because he's kind of, he's a bit prancing and all that kind of stuff. But the fact is that, I mean, I feel like I'm the last person that should be saying this, but I think everyone should just sort of cheat up a bit. Because he's got a theme tune that you can sing along to. He's got 2 catchphrases that are like call and repeat things with the crowd. Like, I would love to see this guy live, like just to have the entrance and for him to do the party time all the time. Don't be a lemon, be a rosebud. Like, just interact with him, have fun with him, because I don't really think there's any, like, that's the thing. Is he like Fandango? No, because Fandango wasn't any fun. Like, it just wasn't fun, and there's not much fun. Santino used to be fun, but he's shit now. So let's just give the Exotic Express one more ride and see how this turns out.
It was only the first appearance, so
I've heard they don't want him to wrestle till Payback. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, the thing is, wrestling isn't really how you sell him. He might be good. I've not seen that many of his matches, but I certainly enjoyed that entrance. And the other thing was, people were complaining because they were like, "Oh, the entrance works better on NXT because it's smaller, and when he has the same number of people on Raw, it doesn't look as good." But they should have had hundreds of people, and I was like, no, that's what they should wait and do at WrestleMania or SummerSlam or a big pay-per-view. Like, don't have him come out with hundreds of people. Imagine this all goes well, and he's at a point where he gets a spot on WrestleMania next year. I mean, it's much more of a great moment if you're in the whatever it's called, the Levi Stadium, and he does literally have 100 people in his entourage, and it's like a big, huge thing. Like, you would pop big for that. So just give it time. It's party time.
I think it's interesting because I feel like with Bray Wyatt and Adam Rose and some of the different characters coming out of NXT, that they're kind of conceptually quite different from what WWE's done in the past. Like when you see them, you don't automatically think of them as wrestlers. Like, you think of them as the character. So it sounds really strange, but like, I can't imagine watching. I imagine Adam Rose more in the sort of party bus scenario than I do in the ring. But that's because I've not really seen much of him in the ring. I've seen him as Leo Kruger, and I've seen him once as Adam Rose. But I think it's kind of a good thing to get the character over a little bit first, because then people like the character before they see the guy in the ring. Because otherwise, you just kind of get a new guy in a ring that people don't really know much about, and it just doesn't really go anywhere. So I mean, people know who he is, and I think that this crowd in Albany were pretty shit generally anyway. So I don't think they should, no offense to Rob who was there, but yeah, I think he'll do well. And obviously, Payback's in Chicago. I'd quite like to see Adam Rose in front of the Chicago crowd. I think that'd be quite fun. So we shall see. Main event time was the Wyatts against the Shield. This is the 3rd time they've had a match, a 6-man tag. They started off
the 4th time.
Was it because they had the Chamber match and then they had the one main event? Did they have another one?
They had another one on Raw. Did they not do a rematch the next night?
Oh, so they did. Yep. So you're right. 4th match, and yeah, the crowd weren't really as hot for it as the previous matches. But again, I don't think this crowd were very good in comparison to other crowds. As always, the Wyatts and the Shield are really good together. But the real story of the match is when the Shield were in control, and all of a sudden, Evolution's theme music hit, and the Wyatts sort of, as Evolution came to the ring, the Wyatts came up behind them, and basically Evolution cost them the match. Bray hits Sister Abigail on Reigns to get the win. And then after the match, Evolution start to beat down the Shield. Orton does a draping DDT to Rollins. Batista slams Ambrose on top of the steel steps. I wish that he'd been able to do that slightly more convincingly, but there you go.
It looked like absolute shit.
Oh, it was almost like he was a MAGA powerbomb from WrestleMania 24. It wasn't quite that.
Batista is a good heel. Like, he is a good heel because he's so fucking hateable. But then I see this and I'm like, oh no. I'm like, you know what? Just fuck off. Like, just get off my TV. Like, you can't do it. He's been back for 4 months and he still can't do a spine buster. Like, he didn't even do it. He just kind of sort of placed him on the steps. It was just so weak. I want to like him. I just wish that the physical aspect of it. I mean, I usually hate the "you can't wrestle" chant, but I can't really blame them.
But then we got Triple H going for a pedigree on Reigns, but Reigns backdropped him. Orton gives him an RKO. Then Triple H pedigrees Reigns. Batista. What I did really like about this, I liked the closing segment because to be honest, out of the 3 top feuds in the company, the Evolution Shield one's the only one that I actually really like. So I was quite happy to see this.
Yeah, like, it is a good segment. Like,
yeah,
this is the conversation I was having with Tom though. Like
I really like the ending to where, because at the pay-per-view, Reigns super punched Batista and beat him, and then the next night, I like the sort of symbolism of Batista getting to do the power bomb to Reigns, the triple power bomb, and Evolution getting to do that.
But
I like that.
This is the thing though. What's the story?
That Evolution want to take out the Shield because the Shield didn't do as they were told. Because Triple H was trying to get them to take out Daniel Bryan. They betrayed him the night after WrestleMania when they came out and helped Bryan. So
that's a series of events. Like, and then the Shield beat them. And the thing is if they go to pay-per-view again, then don't Evolution have to get their win back?
Well, now the other part of the news that we didn't really talk about before because we thought it would be the best time to bring it up now is part of the rumor is that it might not be the Shield against Evolution. There's talks that they are going back and forth on whether to do a 6-man or whether to do a series of 3 singles matches with members of each group going at it one-on-one. I would personally prefer to see the singles matches.
Well, I said that on Monday on the show. I said that they should do 3 singles matches. I think I tweeted this earlier actually. The key thing for me though is that the way I think they'll split it is they'll do obviously Triple H Roman Reigns is the match. I think they'll probably want to do Ambrose Batista and Reigns and Orton, but I really think they shouldn't. I think they should put Batista in there with Seth Rollins and put Ambrose and Orton together. I think that would be the better way, but I just get the feeling they won't. I think they'll want to put Batista in there with Dean Ambrose.
I have a feeling Triple H would want to go with Rollins to get the type of match out of. I feel like Triple H would want to do that. That's just because obviously like they're not going to go with Reigns straight away because that's the SummerSlam match. So,
or is it? Like maybe they're going to do Bryan and Triple H. I mean that still has to happen. They still have to do Bryan Triple H for the title. The Shield are technically that's
logically they have to do that. But this is the company that's forgotten about things before. It depends. I mean, I guess maybe they do Bryan Triple H and Money in the Bank. But do you know what? No matter what way they kind of split it, like I'm looking forward to if they do 3 singles matches. I don't mind if they do the 6-man because I enjoyed the 6-man before. But for me, like there's not much of a story here, but I'm enjoying what's happening with it. I think it's pretty straightforward, and
it's just not enough to. It's like. I don't need stories all the time, but when the shows are as bad as this, I need a reason to want to watch next week. And there's nothing. Like I just feel like between now and Payback, the Shield and Evolution are just going to trade beatdowns with each other, and that's going to be enough to get them through 4 weeks of TV. But it's not enough to make me want to watch 4 weeks of TV. And I need something else. I need something on the line, a stipulation. I need stakes. There needs to be stakes in why these guys are at each other's throat. Like, is there something potentially there for either of them to achieve if they beat each other? Or I just need something more to make me want to. I mean, it's not that it's bad. It's just I don't care enough to keep watching.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get that perspective of it. I think for me, like, yeah, they do need to kind of like give it a bit more meat to the table, but for me, like I'm just so despondent about the Cena Wyatt stuff. Like that, when the Shield and Evolution are together, the crowd are hot for the segments. The Shield act the way that the babyface team should. The heels act the way that they should. It makes sense. It works. I'm much happier watching that than I am watching that other stuff on either of those feuds. So even though I agree with you, there should be more story, but out of the three main event feuds, this is the only one that, for me, I look forward to. Like, now, I'm kind of like, with Bryan and Kane, it's almost like I'm, hiding behind a pillow, just like with one eye up, going, oh, fuck, what are they going to do now? What are they going to do now? And then with Cena Wyatt stuff, like, I've given up on that, to be honest. Like, I don't care. Because ultimately, I know what will happen is that if I get invested again, Cena will let me down again. That's what's going to happen. There's no point in me, and it's not me being pessimistic, it's me being realistic as to the lengths that he's willing to go as a character. So back to Shield and Evolution, I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. I hope they do the 3 singles matches though, because I feel like that's the pay-per-view would be better with 3 singles matches from them rather than the 6-man and then a Rusev squash and all the other mid-card rubbish that they'd probably put in with it.
Yeah, I honestly think that Cena and Wyatt is just... It's the thing I'm most interested in, to be honest, because I think the thing... And I don't necessarily think... I mean, the Shield and Evolution is great. Like, the matches are good. Like, if I could just skip all the in-between shows like Raw and only watch the pay-per-views, I'd be very satisfied by this, but unfortunately I can't. And the thing is that there's just more... There's more meat to the Wyatt and Cena thing and to talk about, because it is fascinating. I think it's a massive missed opportunity. I think I said last week that it's like a series of great moments with no story glue to hold it together and no coherence. And I've got no doubt, because I think Wyatt's a very creative man, that over the next 3 weeks there's going to continue to be really interesting segments of TV that will ultimately... I'm not saying Cena undoes them. I just think that they should have done something way different. I think Wyatt should have probably... Now, at the time I said it made sense for Cena to go over at WrestleMania, and it did then. It did at that point. But I think Wyatt probably should have won the first 2 matches to really... And John Cena should have been despondent, angry, desperate, cheating to beat people, surly, like, and all that kind of stuff, and just being sort of genuinely a bit of an awful prick until he finally defeats him at Payback, and he can, hug some kids, kiss some babies, and then we can return to the status quo. But the fact is now we're at the point where Wyatt is the one who is having to be flexible with his character, and that doesn't make any sense to me long term. So it's hurting him, and I just want this to be over with. I really just want the next 4 weeks to be over with.
It's funny that in 2 of the top feuds in the company, like Daniel Bryan, it's just like as soon as he gets away from Kane, it might get better. And for Wyatt, it's like as soon as he gets away from Cena, it might get better because... And again, it's not that Cena... I want to make this really clear about my opinion on this, is it's not that I don't think that Cena's a talented performer or has the ability to make this good. It's that I don't think he's willing to. I think he's proven time and time again that he's not willing to take the risks that he would need to take and to stretch his character to the dimensions that he would need to make this story work, which is my issue with it. But overall... not a good episode of Raw whatsoever.
I thought it was bad. I hated it.
It was sometimes the 3-hour episodes don't seem that long, but this one, like, because I watched this on the Tuesday because I had work, so I had to just wait to the Tuesday, and like, even when I was watching it and it was like 2 hours 20 minutes without the ad breaks, obviously, like I had to pause it like 4 times. Like one time I went to make something to eat, the next time I went to do something else. Like, I wasn't like glued to it. I wasn't like continuously waiting to see what happened next. I was just kind of like, oh God, when will this end? So, not a great week for Raw, but this has been the Raw Rundown. I hope you've enjoyed it. And hopefully, on next week's Raw Rundown, we have something more positive to talk to. But for Inside the Ropes, we do have something more positive to talk about, because this coming Monday on the 12th of May, we have a huge guest. coming back to Inside the Ropes. Good old JR, Jim Ross, is coming back to Inside the Ropes this coming Monday. That's pretty exciting.
Indeed.
So we'll be back next week on Monday with Jim Ross to talk about Impact and SmackDown and whatever else we get to watch. And then we'll be back later on next week with the Raw Rundown. So thank you very much for listening.